Okay, hopefully I will not be too ungraceful. I wanted to give a big shout out to Tony and Nick at Lotus Indy and Gator Motorsports in Indianapolis, Indiana. They made these test drives absolutely fabulous for us, and they took special care to make this possible for my dad. My dad has been on this Emira journey with me for all of 2 years. We first came to an Emira reveal event here in Indianapolis 2 years ago, and since then, he has only wanted to be able to ride in my Emira or to test drive an Emira. And so this opportunity was just too good to pass up, and Tony really made it easy. My dad is 88 years old and doesn't get around very well. So Tony pulled the Emira right up alongside our minivan so that my dad only had to take a few steps to get from the van into the Emira and then back into the van after the test drive. So I really just wanted to say thank you. And if you're looking for a Lotus or a McLaren or any kind of an exotic car, definitely check out Indy Lotus and Gator Motorsports. A funny thing happened during this experience. One of the cars we test drove was dark verdant. That's a very dark green color, which is almost black in my opinion. And so we drove that car, and at the end of the day, we were heading home, and someone else was taking the dark verdant Emira out for a test drive. And so it just coincidentally, we followed the car for about 3 or 4 blocks. And it occurred to me for the first time then that this was a green car. And so I turned to my dad and I said, "Hey, Dad, if I had to ask you, what color is that car?" And he said, "Well, it's black, of course." So if you're considering the dark verdant color, just be aware that it's extremely dark in color. And I know some folks have said that in certain lighting, you can really see the green highlights, but boy, I've got to believe it's very bright light because we were there on a gorgeous day and it just was not obviously green, which is really a shame because I think the car would look amazing in the right type of green. on you. Go. Testing.
I do start off the automatic in tour mode,
Okay.
just because this one there's a lot more drastic changes. A lot of the behavior changes between tour, sport, and then track mode. So most notably on the automatic, it's going to change the shift pattern. It does hold the RPMs at a higher range, almost just like preemptively expecting an acceleration or things like that.
Right.
So tour is pretty subdued. It feels like a normal car, like nothing crazy, no crazy sounds or anything like that.
So you can be very relaxed.
Yes, absolutely. Sport, you'll notice, let's say we're cruising down the street, it might be in sixth gear. The second you don't have to do anything differently driving, you put it in sport and it downshifts to fourth, exhaust opens up. It'll do a lot more like the cracks and burbles of the exhaust, just kind of like a rev matching downshift type thing. So it sounds pretty cool, and of course, there's things that you can apply if you're using it on the track or driving it a little more sporty. So, and then track mode really just increases all of that just to a further degree and starts to decrease the traction control system. So.
Okay. You haven't had a chance to drive an I4, have you?
Not yet. Not yet. I don't believe there are any over here in North America yet. I know we just now started to see some media coverage. See one being driven, hear one. Everything of the sort. I think China's the first market to receive those cars. Honestly, overseas, it's probably more, especially China's, that's probably going to be more of a drivetrain for those markets because they're a lot more stringent on emissions than we are and stuff. So, but not yet. So I think in the next couple months we should definitely have one over here if we have another test drive event.
Yeah.
I can't wait to drive it personally because I do want to experience the dual clutch, and I know we've actually just had a gentleman with a CLA 45 here earlier, and he loves his car, and it's same drivetrain, just front mounted and much bigger chassis it's going in. So I was just curious because you gave a very good rundown of the different modes. So I'd be very curious to see how that compares with running the DCT in automatic mode. It'll probably be very similar as far as the way the cabin feels, the operation of the shifter, paddle shifters. You're just essentially going to have a different drivetrain. So I don't expect those, like the tuning, especially the different modes, to be too drastically different one from the other. I know I did watch like Harry's Garage video, and one of the things they mentioned was the operation of the automatic shifter. It does kind of do a linear thing where you put it, you hit it once, it goes like into neutral and then drive, so it's like reverse neutral drive. So really, he mentioned that, and I got used to it pretty quickly. I just foot's on the brake, I just go click real fast, and it's in drive. Same thing, just reverse, just click forward. So it's kind of just a characteristic of the way this is at least designed. So, and I believe the reason that's probably set up that way is more so for the dual clutch than it is necessarily for this particular the V6 necessarily. Right. So, okay. Do you have any questions for me? I don't think so. Okay, let's do it. Okay, good. So we're in park, I assume. Yeah. Park. So neutral. One. There you go. Okay. So you have your gear indicator here. And it does have paddles. Yep. And so you'll have the little A there next to that, so it lets you know you're in automatic shifting mode. I do not remember yet if you click it once if it automatically will shift over, or I don't think it'll shift for you. I think it just shifts the modes. Right. It just changes modes. Kind of like when you do the gear select. Right. You hit it once to actually engage your control of it. So how do I go back to automatic mode? So if you're just click that like you're hitting drive, and you can even do that while you're driving. Gotcha. So as long as you don't hit park while you're driving or anything like that, but just remember, if you want to click it back to drive, it will just take you back to automatic mode. Okay. I have to admit, I didn't expect the paddles and the manual shift mode with the automatic? Regular automatic. Yeah. It's definitely useful. And then you can also shift. It is a left-to-right design system, so like shift downshift is just the same as on the steering wheel. So those, at least the orientation matches. Okay. A lot of track guys do also like the automatic because you do have a safeguard against over-revving the engine. Right. So okay, cool. Well, let's. If it's okay with you, I'll try it in all modes. Absolutely. Oh, look at that. Okay. It's got a nice turning radius too, like that. Yeah, that Alcantara. What was the steering wheel in there? Is it leather?
So that was the full leather, yeah.
Okay, yeah, this definitely feels different. Very nice. Hey, it was nice to meet you in person.
You too, yeah, you too. If you put videos up, we'd love a shout out.
Okay, cool. I will be happy to do that.
Before I get to my final thoughts on these Lotus Emiras, I hope you'll subscribe to my channel and turn notifications on so you'll be informed every time I put out new content, like this amazing BMW track day at the Indy Motor Speedway and a hot lap in a BMW spec factory IMSA race car. In the coming weeks, I'll have much more Lotus Emira content, including my final spec and comparisons to the Corvette C8, the Ferrari F8, my Lotus Elise, and my Alfa Romeo 4C. I like to call this picture $1 million worth of supercars next to a dumpster. So you tell me, is this Emira black? Or is that just like super duper dark green? Maybe off black, if there is such a thing? Final thoughts. Seeing the Lotus Emira in Hethel Yellow confirmed my choice. I love the car in that color, and while I think it could do well in a few other colors that they offer, I really like this color the best. Sport versus touring suspension. One of these cars had sport, the other had touring suspension. I didn't pay particularly close attention to this, but I'll have to admit I didn't notice any difference. I take heart from several comments in various forums, in that this is listed as a sport suspension, not a race or track suspension. And so in keeping with that, it's probably just slightly stiffer and more aggressive than the touring suspension. And that's what I've been hearing pretty consistently. So since the roads I drive on are pretty well maintained and I don't do lots of long distances, then I think that the sport suspension is the right choice for me. Leather versus Alcantara interior. I like both, but I think the Alcantara is something I've never experienced before, and I believe it gives it a little bit more of a luxurious feel. So since this is the first new car that I've bought in over 30 years, I think I'm going to splurge and get the Alcantara interior and steering wheel. And last but not least, some thoughts on the automatic transmission versus the manual transmission in this V6 power plant. First, something kind of made me scratch my head. The 0 to 60 mile per hour times listed for both of these cars is identical. And I find that hard to believe because with a torque converter, the automatic should waste a certain significant percentage of power. And I don't know how it is able to achieve the same 0 to 60 miles per hour. My guess is that's not correct. Personally, I like a manual transmission. I like having that control over what gear I'm in. Granted, there are some risks. I don't like all the nanny controls involved in automatics and especially in the DCTs where it's always upshifting and downshifting to protect you from yourself. If I'm going to make a mistake, I think I want to be able to make a mistake and have more control so that I'm always aware of what I'm doing with the car and the car is responding whenever I ask it to do something. So that's just me up on my soapbox talking about manual transmissions. That said, I thought the automatic in this Hethel Yellow Emira was pretty awesome. And I can imagine a future where, maybe I don't want to have a manual transmission and I probably would go for a DCT instead of an automatic, but really, potato, I don't know what the difference is. I guess you can only get the automatic with the V6 and the DCT with the i4, so that might be the deciding factor, but they operate essentially the same way. And, I could see myself potentially having a car like that in the future. So again, I just wanted to thank you for watching today's video, and whatever car you're driving, I hope you're having a blast driving it.